Okay, now you are live. I'm making you the host. Kindly make me the co-host.
Okay. Hi, Pam. I keep hearing how multi-talented you are, Pam.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I like helping.
Yeah, I hear it. I hear it. Hi,
Thanks.
Susan. Hi, Enda. And hi, Sue. Good to see you all this afternoon. Enda, you are at some seashore with the waves rolling in behind you.
St. Augustine Beach, Florida.
Ooh. Remind me where you're from, Enda.
Ireland originally, but now St. Augustine, Florida.
Ah, we have another Get Set Up member from St. Augustine named Melinda Raconse. Where do you hail from in Ireland?
Navan, a town about 25 miles northwest of Dublin.
Okay, so that's not far from Newgrange.
Very close to Newgrange, yes.
Isn't Kells also somewhere up in that way?
Oh, closer still, yes. How do you know Kells? The Book of Kells? Yeah.
Yes, I've been to Ireland. I would love to go back again. I have also been to Newgrange, Dublin, Newgrange, and didn't get to Kells, but I know a lot about the Book of Kells.
Yes.
Which originally came from Iona.
Yeah.
Well,
if you were at Newgrange, you were probably within 7 or 8 miles of Kells.
Oh, yep.
Quite close.
We drove cross country from there to, is it Clonmacnoise? Is that how they say that?
Yes, Clonmacnoise, yes.
And then we went from there to Doolin.
Yes, I've been
stayed
there.
a couple nights in Doolin. Great music.
Terrific music, yeah.
And we took a walk along the cliffs of Moher.
Mm-hmm. Was it a fine day when you were in Moher, or was it foggy?
It was a fine day.
Okay. That makes all the difference in the world.
Yes, and we walked from Doolin to Moher with a guide who was from the area. They have just developed a coastal path. And I think he said they had to get the property rights from like 21 farmers because the farms all go down to the shore. And that was the way, in my opinion, to go to the cliffs of Moher, was to walk along that path up there instead of getting off in a bus with 1,000 other people and walking up and looking over the edge and getting back on the bus.
Yes. But the weather has a lot to do with being at the cliffs of Moher.
It does. We went from there. We drove from Doolin down to Dingle and stayed 2 or 3 nights in Dingle. And then we went to Kenmare and we just had a great time. Not only do I love Ireland, I love the Irish people.
Yeah.
One thing about Ireland that didn't strike me until I'd been there, I knew that a lot of Americans had Irish ancestry, including me and my wife. But I didn't stop to think how many Irish had American distant relatives. Somebody in the family had gone off to America. And so they could think for a second, well, it could be recent history, could be 100-year-old history, or 200, maybe not 200, but they could pick off the name of somebody in the family that had gone to America. And they
Yeah.
always pleased to meet Americans who had Irish ancestry. Well, welcome
Yes.
everyone this afternoon. We are probably all here. We're going to talk this afternoon about traveling safely. And if you would please put in the chat where you're from, number one, and number two, please put in the chat what kind of safe traveling things you'd like to know about. Like you might want to know about, how do I keep from being having a pickpocket me? How do I keep from getting mugged? How do I keep from falling off the cliffs of Moher? How do I keep safe while I'm say healthy while I'm traveling? How do I protect myself from COVID-19? It could be any of those things, all of those things. That way I'll make sure I touch on these different topics. So we're talking about staying safe while we travel. And the discussion of Cliffs of Moher reminded me of a photograph, which I probably can't retrieve here in more than a few minutes, of me standing by the Cliffs of Moher on a sign that says something like danger, and it shows someone falling off the cliffs, which is a realistic danger.
Yes.
I'm going to remember that picture. I'm going to make a note of that to put in the slideshow next time. Let's see. Let me check the chat here. And by the way, we have Rachel, who is not Kevin, who is our TA today. Slight mislabeling there. She's here to help us out. So when anyone has questions, please put them there in the chat to the TA if you need help with something. And she has also helpfully put in the message that you can request a recording of this class by emailing help@getsetup.io. Kathy is from Grand Blanc, Michigan. She wants it safety while traveling solo. Very good question. And by the way, we have a traveling solo or single class coming up next Tuesday at 7:00. It's kind of an interest group of people who want to explore the possibility of some group travel for singles and solos. Came out of our solo travel class, so that reminds you all of that. Alma, Susan's from Houston. Alma's from Austin. Pam Penny is from Grand Rapids, Michigan. She wants to concerned about getting mugged. That's one I'm concerned about too. How to blend in while using a map. Oh, I get it. Yes. How to stand out in the middle of somewhere with a big map in your hand and not look like you're someone who's trying to figure out where they're going. Yes, I get that concern. Sue is from Ohio. How to gauge safe areas when traveling, domestic and international. Kathy wants to know, she says, I heard that while traveling internationally, you shouldn't wear tennis shoes because that shows you're an American. I'm not sure if that's true. I've seen a lot of Europeans with tennis shoes. I will tell you, and I hope this isn't a stereotype, certainly not a negative stereotype. I can spot a European from an American, especially men, with two distinguishing features. One is their shoes. Okay. And the other one is their glasses. So Europeans are bigger on glasses as fashion, including men. And men tend to have certain styles of shoes. So there is some truth to this thing about the sneakers. But I've also seen plenty of European men wear sneakers. But you can usually tell a European man in the country or somewhere else by their glasses or their sneakers. So Pam says, back in the day, denim meant American. Back in the day, it did. Doesn't anymore. But the international trend is to wear marshmallows now, white tennis shoes. Okay, see. The last time I was in a major city as a tourist was Rome in October of 2019. And I didn't worry about standing out as a tourist because I don't think there was anyone there that I saw that wasn't a tourist. There were obviously some Italians walking around, but the streets were packed with tourists. And we could tell it. So let me go ahead and do a screen share here. Nice to have you all here. If you haven't had a chance to put yet in the chat where you're from or your travel concerns, please do safety concerns, please do that. And don't hesitate to put in questions or comments in the chat that we'll come back to today as we're talking about how to travel safely. Traveling safely. And I know that's something we all want to think about all the time when we're traveling, not just internationally, but also traveling within the US or Canada. Most of you know me. I'm your guide, Russ Eanes from Harrisonburg, Virginia. I did a class on the Shenandoah Valley on Tuesday evening. We'll be running that class again next week. I bet you didn't know there were so many fabulous things to see in the Shenandoah Valley, but come to that class when we do it next week, next Thursday, and you'll find out. I'm a writer, a walker, and a cyclist. I formerly was a book publisher, and I love to help authors shape their ideas into a book. I'm now a full-time guide with Get Set Up. Love all the energy I get from working with older learners. You all know that we learn from each other and Get Set Up. So ideally, we can see you and your cameras are on. I thank you, all of you who've got your cameras on. And I've already let you know how you can get a recording of this class afterward. We are live streaming today, so the best way to participate is to join us and register for a class. Lastly, Get Set Up's not paid to promote any specific products. So let's talk about safe travel. This is sort of our agenda today. We're going to talk about what safe travel means, or how I define traveling safely. And of course, you all have concerns, which we will discuss. So first of all, it includes staying healthy, protecting yourself from physical harm, and protecting your valuables. These are the things that people ask about the most, and we'll talk about them each a little bit. I'd also invite any of you who are travelers to share your not only concerns, but your experiences and expertise, because I certainly don't know everything about traveling safely. And also I'm a man and I can perceive safety different than a woman can perceive safety. That's obvious. So I welcome any of your comments. Here's a fun one. If you've ever been in London and you're stepping off the street corner, you may see this. The traffic's on the other side of the road, and a lot of Americans forget about that. So the Londoners have kindly painted on the roadway, right inside the sidewalk and the crosswalk, look right, because most of us who are Americans are attuned when we're stepping off a crosswalk to first look left, because traffic's on the right-hand side of the road, but it's the opposite in England. And I'll tell you, I've been caught by that, wanting to step off into the crosswalk and forgetting to look right. So anyway, the point I want to get here with this is that wherever you go, you have to know your risks and know what is different about the country you're in, which is really the very first point. Know the risks of where you're going. I get a lot of questions from people like, how do you keep safe doing this? How do you keep safe doing that? How do you find out about this? And how do you find out about that? And my answer is always, you have to know the risks of where you're going. You have to read about it in advance. Don't just show up in Spain and discover that the people don't speak English. You should do a little bit of research and know where you're going. You can read guidebooks. You can read travel forums. You can read locals. You can ask a local their advice. You can look at some online links about where to find something, whether certain places are safe or not. Rick Steves always has a lot of good advice about traveling safely. He can tell you all sorts of things about it, a particular community or a country. The Lonely Travel Guides also have information about safety while you travel and good tips for you. Nothing really can substitute, though, researching in advance where you're going and understanding the risks. I'll give you some examples. I went to Colombia twice. My son lived there for 5 years, and his grandson was born there, and went to some very interesting, fascinating places in Colombia, besides spending quite a bit of time in Bogota itself. I went to Western Colombia, the region known as the Chocó or Afro-Colombia, which is a very poor area, populated almost entirely by people who are descendants of the slaves in Colombia. And it's a unique culture. Everyone's speaking Spanish, but very African in many ways. And they get 350 inches of rain there a year, so it's very wet. And when we were in the city where my son lived of East Mina, which was about 10,000 people, I felt completely safe the whole time. But my son gave me a few tips, and one thing he said was, don't take pictures when you're walking through town. He knew I had my camera out. I'm a photographer. And I kind of looked at him quizzically, and he said, you don't know whether any of the people walking down the street around here somewhere might be a member of an armed group. And he let me know that there are still armed groups in the countryside around there. They were not a danger to foreigners. They weren't necessarily even a danger to Colombians, but they were a presence. And he told me a story of a group of pastors from Canada that came to East Mina, and they were looking at a project which they sponsored. It is a farming co-op where they grow cacao, and it's a cacao nursery. They have tens of thousands of cacao plants, and they were helping farmers who grew coca change from being coca farmers to cacao farmers. So they went from growing the stuff that you use to make cocaine to the stuff that you use to make chocolate. And this group of pastors came down to visit their project. And while they were there, they wandered around East Mina, and they had big digital SLR cameras, and were taking pictures all over the place. And my son said that about a half an hour after the pastors started walking through that area, one of his coworkers got a phone call on her cell phone. Someone said, you need to tell the pastors to get out of that part of town and put away their cameras. And this woman didn't know who called her or how this person got her phone number, but my son said, just be a good local when you're here and don't take pictures. He also warned me, anywhere in Colombia, do not take a picture of a policeman. And in fact, I would say anywhere in the world right now, I would expand that bit of advice. Don't take a picture of a policeman anywhere. It's a concern. And so wherever you're going, know the risks, ask locals for advice. You can also look up, if you're concerned about something, you can look up travel forums. There's TripAdvisors and other travel. There's many times there are travel forums, even Facebook groups dedicated to travel in certain parts of the world. And you can read on those forums. You can ask questions about certain places if you think there's safety concern. Safety concern might not just be physical safety, like being harmed. It could be, do I need shots to go somewhere? Like when I went to Colombia, I asked my son, do I need to get shots for malaria or other diseases? He said, no, you should be okay. It turned out in the 5 years he was there, he got a dengue fever. He got about 4 or 5 tropical diseases. But I was okay. My wife and I were okay for the several weeks we were there. Same thing when we went through, also toured the coffee region. We were just careful where we were going and talked to locals about what was safe or what might not be safe. So first thing to know is know the risks of where you're going, and there's no substitute for studying it in advance. I do a whole class, and I did it yesterday, about when can we travel where, and I talk a lot about staying healthy as you come out of the pandemic. The whole world is sort of opening back up to travel, not everywhere at all. There are places that are still locked down, but Europe, for example, is opening. You can soon Americans can go to Spain. I think I just saw the announcement that France is going to open up. Italy is opening up, and these are places that have been hard hit by the pandemic, and so they are justifiably cautious. But I would say if you're going to go anywhere and you want to know what are the risks for the pandemic, nothing can substitute from doing research. And one of the places that we looked at yesterday on our class on the pandemic was this travel requirements from Raleigh-Durham Airport. And I'll send you this link in your class notes today. It's got a map of the whole world, and it shows you the COVID-19 risk everywhere. You can also go to the New York Times. They have a free a COVID-19 section. You don't have to have a subscription to the Times, and it shows you the severity of COVID-19 in every country around the world. So you really can find out all these things in advance. The destination countries themselves also have information. So I'm thinking, I'm kind of planning a tentative trip to Italy this fall, and I've been researching what the requirements are to go to Italy, whether I have to have a mask on the airplane, whether I have to quarantine when I get there. And so for right now, for example, Americans coming in, if they have been vaccinated and have a negative COVID-19 test before they arrive and get a test when they arrive and it's negative, they can travel freely through the country. No need to quarantine. So I've researched that. I've also found out, for example, that if you take an Alitalia flight, at least at the very moment, you can't carry a bag on board because they don't want passengers to spend a lot of time congregating around the carry-on luggage compartments on an airplane. Remember also, you have to come home and be aware of all the restrictions about coming back to the United States. So, for example, you may have to have a negative COVID-19 test within a certain number of days of arriving back in the US. So check that. We all want to be safe as we travel. We want to minimize the risks, and there's no reason not to be safe if you've checked and done your research. The number one thing I tell people for traveling safely, though, is in terms of pandemic, is get a vaccination. And did you know that if you get a vaccination, you can get a free Krispy Kreme donut every day? Just go in and show them your card. I went there with my daughter last month, and we got our free Krispy Kreme donuts. So there's more reasons than Krispy Kreme to getting a vaccination, but that's an extra incentive. Any questions about these first two things I've talked about? Knowing the risks. Anybody have any advice or insight they want to give about that or about pandemic? Or more questions?
Russ, do you have to get the COVID shots in order to be able to travel internationally?
Right now, the vaccination is required to travel internationally, yes. The possible exception might be Mexico. I know Mexico has been open to Americans all along, and last time I checked, I don't remember seeing if they required COVID-19 vaccination, but I would tell anyone, please get vaccinated before you go traveling. It's not worth the risks of not being vaccinated if you can get vaccinated. Let me go on here a bit. So the next concern after pandemic, a lot of us is protecting ourselves from physical harm. So this might be something that you would be thinking about if you're in a big city and you want to know whether that a certain part of the city is safe at a certain time of day, mostly at night, or if you're a single, or particularly women want to know this. And the number one thing I'd say is talk to locals. It's a big thing I talk about in travel over and over again. I like to do slow travel, get to know locals, live like a local. They'll tell you anything you need to know about what parts of the city or town are safe and when to go there or not to go there. And really nothing can substitute from that firsthand knowledge that the locals will give you. It all comes back to knowing the risks, though, of where you're going. And you can find, for example, in guidebooks or in online forums, I have read about people's experiences of being pickpocketed or feeling unsafe in a certain place. And so you can search forums and things like that. I walked across Spain, the Camino de Santiago in 2018, 500 miles. And I know a lot of women have said, oh, is that safe for a single woman walking? And my answer is I walked along I went solo, but I met a lot of women who were walking solo, and they all said they always felt safe there. So talking to other people who have had similar experiences and have been to the same places can give you insight. Susan.
My experience, the European cities are safer than US cities as far as just moving around in general and being by yourself. I'm not afraid when I'm in Europe. I'm not afraid to walk around by myself at all. That probably wouldn't apply for developing countries and things like that, but in Europe is really safe compared to US cities of the same size.
You are correct, and I would say that, except I'm a man, and I realize that means something different. If I feel safe, a woman might not feel safe in the same circumstances. But I agree with you. You also can know that you can feel safe in crowds. However, crowds are also where pickpockets go. So beware. One of the things I teach in some of the other classes is using a sling bag. And a sling bag is a bag that can adjust from the front to the back. You can slide it around in the front or slide around the back. I recommend women to use it in lieu of a purse. What my wife uses in lieu of a purse. Besides keeping the things you'd keep in a purse in it, you can also keep a jacket or sweater or some sunscreen. You can put a water bottle in it. And I see Susan is going to show us her handy dandy wrist wallet. Susan, go ahead and explain to us what you got there.
Well, a purse is fine for non-valuables, I'd say, like water bottle and things like that. But for credit cards and like any documents you might have, like driver's license that you might carry just for ID, and cash, wrist wallet is your friend because it's right on your wrist. You can cover it up with your sleeve. People don't even know it's there. And if they know it's there, a lot of times they think it's a wrist brace for your wrist, like a medical thing rather than a wallet.
Show us what that looks like.
Okay. I first got it to exercise with, to carry like car keys and things in, but it's expandable, fits on your wrist, has two sides. It has a zip pocket I carry my driver's license there. And another little fold over pocket. I carry my credit cards and any little spare cash I have here. You can put one on both wrists and sort of divide things up. I don't even carry a purse to the grocery store anymore. I have my wrist wallet. So, and you can take everything out and put it in the washing machine if it gets dirty and wash it, and it's good to go.
And I suppose if you did sprain your wrist, it could double. If you got enough cards stuffed in there, you could double as a wrist brace.
Yeah, I could do that too.
Pam.
Yeah, the talking to locals, I think it's a great idea, but I think maybe it's, being female as well. I don't know who to trust even as a local. I don't go to bars to talk to people. I don't even know about the hotel because I think the hotel doesn't really want to, I get the feeling sometimes they want to make it sound like everything's great. This is a great area because we're at the hotel and they want you to stay. So how do you meet just your Joe Schmo to get an honest, insight?
Well, if you have a chance to stay in a guest apartment, I've always connected with the people that rent me the apartment for local information. Yeah. And I understand. Yeah, I probably wouldn't want to hit someone up in a bar with questions.
Right.
But I do think I have gotten good insight from people at the desk at a hotel or a concierge in a bigger hotel, if there's a concierge. The other option is like if you can ever get on a forum and talk to people that have traveled places, they can give you insight and ideas. They're not always locals, but sometimes they are.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of if you're kind of in the moment and you kind of need some insight pretty quickly. You've had good luck with the hotels though. They seem pretty straightforward and honest because I feel comfortable talking to businesses.
I've gotten some of my best insights from people behind the desk at a hotel, or if I'm staying at a bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
For example, is a good place. That's one reason why I urge people when you're traveling, if you have a concern, like, so if you're in a city where you just know you don't need to worry about anything, that's one thing. But if you're somewhere where you are concerned, it might be worth it staying in a place where you're able to make that local connection, even if it costs you a little bit more. So if you're an Airbnb, for example, you can talk to your hosts. You can even message them beforehand. Say, hey, I'm going to be arriving at such and such a date. We're going to go out for supper. Any concerns about where I might be going this evening, any areas of town? Personally, I've felt safe everywhere I've gone, but that's again, partly being a man, but I've also been in a lot of cities that were safer. There were some places in Colombia I felt a little bit less safe. But again, I had my son to ask, and he was like a local.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions about physical harm? We'll talk about that a little bit more here. When it comes to protecting your valuables, this is something that a lot of people ask questions about. How do I keep my valuables safe when I'm traveling? And the very first thing I recommend to people is leave most of your valuables at home or take the minimum with you. I'm a watch guy. I have a kind of a collection of watches. I enjoy wearing different watches on certain days. I always take just one watch with me when I travel. No point leaving extra watches around as a temptation to anybody. And the only valuables you should have is like a credit card, an ATM card, and a bit of cash, whatever you're comfortable carrying. Otherwise, I don't have other extra jewelry or anything like that, other than a wedding ring or whatever I'm wearing. And again, I know for some women that might be hard. It might be hard for some men too. But I say you're traveling to experience it, not to have that stuff with you. So leave them at home as much as you can. Number two, wherever you are, be aware of your surroundings. And so, for example, when my wife and I were on some very crowded buses in Rome, I had a stuffed sack and she had a sling bag, and we shifted them around so they were in our front, and didn't have to worry about anybody trying to grab something out of that pack. So really, you have to be aware of your surroundings. I mean, I know someone who had a cell phone stolen on a subway in the U.S., and she was obviously very not blatantly, but just obviously talking on her phone the whole time. And she just had it out in front of her like this. And at a subway stop, someone jumped up, just knocked the phone out of her hand, grabbed it, and just hopped off. And so she said later, I just shouldn't have been doing that. I should just kept my phone in my pocket. I wasn't in a safe place and I knew it. And if I'd had it in my pocket, I would have been okay. So being aware of your surroundings is very important. I'm just going to check the chat. Oh yeah, we'll come back. It's a good point here someone made about bartenders or people in restaurants. So be aware of your surroundings. Use those over the shoulder bags. And if you were in my class yesterday, let's see, it was the class Top International Travel Tips. I talked about those sling bags and where you can buy them and what they look like. And they're very handy because you can shift them from the front to the back. I also encourage people, if you keep things in pockets, so I'm a man and I do, I have zippered pockets that are inside another pocket. So it really makes it difficult. I mean, I even have a hard time getting things out of those pockets. So I know it would be really difficult for someone to get in there. I even have a pair of pants where the pocket's inside my top pocket, and I can just keep my hand in that pocket all the time, and I can feel if a wallet is there if I'm ever in an area where I'm concerned about it. If you do have some valuables along, maybe a passport, a wallet, or some cash, and you have a safe lodging, leave it there. If not, if you're in a hotel, the hotels often have little safes. They do have a safe at the desk, but more and more, when I've been traveling abroad, I've seen small safes about the size case in a room that you can create your own combination for as you use it and go out. And if you're staying in a hostel, and I have stayed in hostels with a backpack, I stay in ones that have a locked cupboard, and the key is in the cupboard, and it fits a backpack, and you just put your backpack in, lock it, and walk away with the key, and that keeps your things safe while you're out and about during the day. So that's the way I would recommend keeping your valuables safe. It is a good question about the people have asked about pickpockets. Again, that's something that there's a lot of information out there about where people have been pickpocketed. and how it happens. And in large cities with lots of tourists, you can be a mark. You can be a target for someone. Susan asked, this is, I guess, in reference to Pam. How about a bartender or wait staff in a restaurant? I have asked wait staff or even bartenders or like a hostess or someone at a restaurant for advice on what's safe. I will say I've generally traveled in places that are safe, and that made a point of that. And again, that's part of the research I've done on where I go ahead of time, so that I don't have to spend so much time worrying when I'm there about safety. Any more questions or comments about any of this so far? Stop share here. It was a chance for us to do some wisdom sharing if anybody's got some experiences from their travel. Pam, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the term they use anymore, but I remember when we went to Paris, they were called gypsies. Is that still something that, I mean, it's been years, so is that still something to be aware of when you're out and about in those big cities that are still safe, but yet they have that crowd of what they were called gypsies? I don't know if that's PC anymore or whatever.
The Roma do have that reputation. I'm not sure that they're any more dangerous than anybody else.
Yeah.
And I have not seen a lot in the cities where I've gone to. If you know the movie The Way, Martin Sheen has his backpack taken by a young boy who's a Roma, but has a happy ending to it.
Okay.
I couldn't say about that. I think, I've probably the most dangerous I've ever felt in European cities is just panhandlers, and I didn't feel unsafe with them, or people that were extremely drunk. I did get accosted by a couple of young men very early one morning in a train station in Cologne. And I could tell they were maybe looking to mess with me. And I turned around and I said in German, "I don't understand what you're saying." And they just walked off. And that was probably because I was at a train station very early, and the plaza outside the train station was pretty empty.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
More insights or questions about how to travel safely? I will mention on the airplane, I flew for the first time in over a year and a half. I intentionally didn't fly in 2020. I felt very safe. I was on a very crowded flight from Dulles to Portland, Maine, and everybody had masks on. I had heard and read, and I believe that the airflow on the air quality in an airplane is very high quality. And so I wasn't worried about that. I'm also vaccinated. And when on the flight back from Portland to Dulles, it was about maybe 25% full. There were a lot of empty seats. The airport was, again, probably 1/3 the number of people, if that many, as before. Dulles Airport's a pretty crowded place. So my wife and I were flying back, and we entered the Portland airport. We wondered if something had happened, because we were the only people walking through the airport for the longest time. It's pretty early in the morning, though not that early, 9 o'clock, I guess. So I personally feel safe right now about airports and planes. I actually feel safe about buses and trains. But again, I'm vaccinated and I'm feeling safe. And I'm one of those who will wear a mask. I don't like to wear a mask. I've always wore a mask when I was asked to. I just find them uncomfortable. And I will, if it makes someone feel better, I will wear a mask. But I also partly think that for me, not having a mask is also a sign that I have confidence in the vaccination I've gotten. And I really like to see us all get vaccinated and get back to normal life and travel the world again. Some of you that watched the Rick Steves video know that he made a big deal about advertising when he got his shots back in February. Maybe it was March.
So I think, to me, it seems like the bottom line is you do your research, you take the precautions that you can. If something happens, it's not your fault. It's just, then there was nothing you could have done. So just enjoy yourself and be smart. Right?
Exactly. The world is much safer than we think it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, even going to Mexico, I have a friend, Mark Miller, he was a special speaker here back in May. He lives in Ajijic, Mexico on Lake Chapala. And he was back in the States for about a month, and he met someone at a high school reunion in New Jersey, and this person was chiding him for living in Mexico. He said, that's a terribly unsafe place. And Mark said, well, you're living in an unsafe place too. And the guy said, what do you mean? It's perfectly safe here. And he goes, well, I hear there's murders in Chicago. And the guy goes, well, but that's 1,000 miles away. And he said, well, the same thing's true where I live. It's perfectly safe where I live in Mexico. And I think some of us that were in classes, we looked at Guanajuato and Oaxaca. And, you know, here's the thing I tell people, the cities that are heavily dependent on tourism are also heavily dependent on keeping them safe. If they're not safe, they won't have the tourists. And that's what I've had people in those countries tell me. They say, we want our place safe because if it's not safe, the tourists won't come here. And that's a large part of our economy. And so the bottom line, Pam, you're right. Most of the world is very safe. It might even be safer than where we are. And do your research. If there's any reason for concern, find out about it in advance, but otherwise go and enjoy yourself. Any more questions or comments? Any of you experienced travelers out there have any more insights you want to give us before you go? Well, you've been a great class. Enjoying seeing all of you. Some of you are new, perhaps, to travel classes, for me at least, or maybe I haven't recognized your name, but I'm glad to have you. There's lots of travel classes you can go to. I'm going to take 1 second just to show you how you can find travel classes easily now at Get Set Up. Whoop. Don't knock the microphone over first. So if you go to Get Set Up, there's two ways to find classes. One is just to click on the classes button on the left, and down here on the right-hand category filter, you can just click on travel. And there they are. We've now got all sorts of travel classes listed. And, you know, I'm teaching some, but they're also being taught by some other people. There are interest groups. So just go down here and click on one of them. And like this one, Top 10 Travel Tips, that one's not scheduled yet, but it'll be coming. You can just get notified, and you'll be notified when that class is going to be held, probably in a couple of weeks. If you want to traveling solo, has to be rescheduled. It's like these ones in the bottom aren't scheduled yet. So we only schedule out about a week. That's why I wouldn't worry if you see a class, you don't see it scheduled. We only schedule out about a week. Like this weekend, we're going to schedule the week after next. Or next week is already scheduled. So if you want to know how to save on travel as a senior, here it is. It's Tuesday, June 15th at 3:30, and there's 53 seats left. So there's lots of room in that class for people. So that's one way to find classes. You can also search by guide. So if you want to look for Deb Livingston's cooking and nutrition class, you just look up Deb in the search bar, and you can scroll down through all of Deb's classes. And I know some of you have gone to Deb's classes because she's told me about some of you that have been in her classes. And same thing's true if you want to go to Donna's music or art classes. You can just scroll down there. Let's Talk. Oh, she does Alexa, TV streaming services. Yeah, Donna also does a lot of tech classes. So those are all here. You can scroll down by guide. So just want to encourage you all to take time to look for any type of classes. You can also go over here to the left, and you can change the filter. So enjoy looking for more travel classes or anything else you want to know. Glad to have you all here today. You'll get an email at the end with some of the notes, and links. Enda, did you have a question?
Yes, I was going to ask, where can we find that wrist wallet that Susan talked about?
Amazon.com.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think it came in a pack of 2 of them for roughly around $10 or something like that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great suggestion, Susan. Thank you. Okay, you all have a good afternoon. I have one more class today at 4:00. We'll talk about how to pack a carry-on for a 2-week trip. If you want to figure out how to do it, I'll tell you. I just did it. I wasn't in a 2-week trip. My wife and I packed into one carry-on for a 4-day trip. So 2 people, 4-day trip into one carry-on. That's like one person for 7 days. I guess it's not quite 2 weeks. Yeah. Oh, Kathy, last thing says I tried looking for travel forums on Facebook. You didn't find much. Sorry. But keep searching. Search by country, search by types of travel. You might find them. Have a good afternoon, everybody. See you in other classes. So long.